and welcome all. And thank you, Najwa, for your time. I know it is late in the UAE, but we really appreciate it. And I've had the opportunity over the past couple of years in particular to get to know Najwa a bit and to talk on different panels, but also just really to have an opportunity, which is why this Quorum is so really a wonderful environment, because this was the first time I met Najwa a couple of years ago at a Quorum event up in New York. But it really is so wonderful because it allows, it facilitates these type of engagements in a real sense and connections in a real sense, not just meeting somebody, but really getting to know them and have a more of a hopefully lifelong relationship, friendship, and way of collaborating and helping each other, which I really think is number one, very, very simpatico with all of us. And it really harkens to the fundamental objective and core mission and vision of the Quorum Initiative. Najwa is the General Counsel of the Emirates Investment Authority out of the UAE. And she is also a powerhouse woman attorney and leader among all of women professionals throughout the Middle East, but also particularly with regard to women attorneys, and really helping to engender the sort of networks, relationships, support that really can help all of us and the younger generations as well coming up and being even more successful, or at least having an easier path, hopefully. In that regard, Najwa has worked in different regions, as obviously the Middle East and the Gulf region, but also in Europe and US, and really has such a global and multicultural perspective on the world of these issues, and kind of how we can each be partners in the true sense of that and helping to advance women. So that is at a very high level, but Najwa has a really interesting story. And that's where I think we'd like to start, Najwa, is if you can just share your story, your journey of what's gotten you to where you are today.
Thank you very much, Tara, for this very kind and generous introduction. I really appreciate it. Good day, ladies. It's really an honor. I'm very honored and delighted to be able and invited to speak to you today. And I really would like to take this opportunity to thank Meg, Tara, and Diane for introducing me to the Quorum Initiative and its community of wonderful executive women who are committed and dedicated to women's advancement and women's empowerment. My story is simple and I think interesting in some ways. I am originally from Libya. I was born in Tripoli, a beautiful city on the Mediterranean, to a Libyan father and a Palestinian woman. When I was 5 years old, we moved to Kuwait. My family moved to Kuwait, and Kuwait is one of the countries in the GCC that is considered to be a liberal country where we were introduced to excellent education. It had people living from different nationalities, a really mix of ethnic groups. So at a young age, I was able to meet people from different parts of the world, make friendships with people from different parts of the world, and really appreciate that people are different, and appreciate and respect different religions and different civilizations. As a young child, we traveled abroad all the time. I was fortunate in that respect. We visited the US, Europe, and Asia. We had families scattered all over the world. And after finishing my high school years in Kuwait, I attended law school for 4 years in Kuwait and graduated with a degree in law and Islamic jurisprudence, after which I enrolled at the University of Jordan and studied a master's in international law. And 2 years after, when I finished the program, I published a book on the rights of children in international law and under the UN Convention for Protection of Children. Following that, I decided that I was interested in traveling to the US, applying to universities, and going to law school in the US. And the reason is I was always, as a young girl, fascinated by the US Supreme Court. I used to read articles about the US Constitution, the US Supreme Court. My dad had studied in the US and was the first Libyan to obtain a PhD degree from a US university. He talked to me about courses he's taken in legal studies in the US. So I applied and got accepted to Columbia Law School, and I enrolled to study law. And I spent a couple of probably the best years of my life as a student at Columbia, engaged with the best group of teachers, professors, and also colleagues. Upon graduation, I joined the United Nations Development Program in the Arab Bureau over there. And I was just a young lawyer, helping doing research mainly. And I also, after 3 years with the UNDP, worked for an international company in New York and spent a total of 8 years in New York between school and work. I moved to Washington, D.C. When I was approached for a job at the World Bank, where also I joined the legal department and worked on development projects in the MENA region and the GCC. Also, while in Washington, D.C., I tried working in private practice for a couple of years with one of the leading firms in Washington, D.C. I was not too thrilled about private practice. I didn't find myself in private practice. I think I was not fortunate enough to get the right mentor and the right person to really give me direction and help me grow. So 4 years after I moved to Washington, D.C., 4 years after I moved to Washington, D.C., I was headhunted for a job in Kuwait. And having grown up in Kuwait, I really welcomed the opportunity and moved back to the region, mainly to be closer to my parents. During my 12 years in the US, I used to see them for a couple of weeks a year. And moved back to Kuwait, joined the private sector in Kuwait, both in Kuwait Petroleum Corporation, and then was one of the founding teams of an investment banking company that was the investment banking arm of the largest bank in Kuwait. So I worked in Kuwait for 6 years, and they were very productive, very excellent years, networking and working on various deals and transactions in the banking industry. Later in 2008, early 2008, I was headhunted for the job of the General Counsel of Abu Dhabi Investment Council, which is the sovereign wealth fund of Abu Dhabi. And I moved to set up the legal department within the fund, and was the head of legal and head of compliance for 8 years, where I worked on various, easily more than 1,000 transactions across various asset classes as an institutional investor investing globally. 4 years ago, I made my last job move, where I joined Emirates Investment Authority, which is the sovereign wealth fund of the federal government of the UAE. And within Emirates Investment Authority, I am the general counsel and the secretary of the board, and I also lead the compliance function. Throughout my journey, I was always and remain very passionate about women rights, women empowerment, and also bridging and building a dialogue between this part of the world and the West on issues related to women empowerment and advancement of women in their careers.
Thank you, Najwa. That is truncating a very long and rich professional life and personal life in a short period of time. And so what I'd like to, so you've had a number, obviously, of experiences and perspective. And you're talking about, bridging not the gap, but the relationship, building the connections, tighter connections
Right.
between the Middle East and the United States and other regions. And you know, we have, I say we, me, you know, in the U.S. have a certain perspective or view, perhaps, of the Middle East, and particularly women in the Middle East. And so, can you talk a little bit about kind of that whole kind of broad issue about women and professional women in the Middle East, understanding that, you know, the Middle East is how many countries, right? And so to glop it all as one region, kind of one whole consistent culture and approach, I realize that is not the case. But I can also imagine over the course of your life and your experience, there's been a lot of development and change. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So the Middle East, I mean, Middle East and North Africa, countries in the Middle East and North Africa are diverse. So even though they share some common characteristics, they're very diverse. The Levant region is different from the GCC region, and both are different from, you know, North Africa. Having said that, you would find that, you know, we have different ethnic groups, different religions really working and living and worshiping peacefully across the Middle East. Politically, we also have, you know, different forms of government in the Arab world. And as you know, Islam is the dominant religion in the Arab world, and the Arab world makes between, I think it makes up between 15 to 18% of the Muslim world. If we talk about women in the Arab world, I think where we are right now, it's an exciting time for women in the Arab world, because over the last decade, we've really witnessed very significant change in women's rights and in governments really adopting legal reform at a very, very large scale across various countries in the Middle East to promote women's rights and to you know, build a framework for women to really work and practice and contribute to the economy and to society. So if we speak about, for example, the country where I live in the UAE, the UAE is a leading country in the Arab world when it comes to gender equality, when it comes to women really practicing, for example, political rights. The Speaker of the Parliament here is a female. Today, they've announced the appointment of the first female CEO of the largest bank in the UAE. Women in the legal field are attorneys, you know, judges, prosecutors. Also, we have now a law that mandates equal pay between men and women, and encourages the empowerment, the economic empowerment of women. Another country, another very good example is Saudi Arabia, for example. Saudi Arabia, over the last 5 to 7 years, have also enacted new laws to support civil rights and, you know, family rights for women. So women now have the right to vote, to participate in their parliament, which is called the Shura Council. Women now, their right to drive, for example, have been recognized officially. It was always in the law. They can drive and they could drive. It just was, I think, traditionally not practiced. They have now the right to be employed just, you know, side by side with men in sectors where they were not allowed to work in the past. There is also legal reform that has a very positive impact on women in business, entrepreneurs, access to finance, also banks, you know, lending women at higher percentages, and so on and so forth. We've seen also new laws in countries like Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, criminalizing, you know, discrimination against women, domestic violence, sexual harassment. So really, there has been very, very positive change across the Arab world recently in relation to women's rights and economic and legal empowerment of women.
That's great. That's wonderful to hear. And let me ask, excuse me, in terms of these new And I say new, is it within what, the last couple of years?
The last, it depends. In some countries, it's been within the last decade. In others, it's more recent. Yeah.
Okay. And so, and part of that's obviously equal rights under law, right?
Yes.
First and foremost, and then getting to then the culture piece, right? Because, you know, as we know very keenly in the United States, you know, you can have the legal framework, and then you can have, you know, still a lot of roadblocks and challenges in terms of moving more positively to the culture piece. How do you see that unfolding in the region?
I think the bit that deals with the cultural norms and the barriers that exist in probably some stereotypes, and the barriers that sometimes within women are even self-imposed. I think that bit we still need to work harder on across various countries in the Middle East, especially when we talk about countries where really resources are scarce, you know, countries that are not exporting oil, countries where, you know, a woman in a rural area has actually zero opportunity or almost zero opportunity to get adequate, you know, education or access to jobs and you know, access to really a normal life where she can practice those rights. So I think now women groups, civil society, you know, institutions and associations are trying to promote the awareness of, you know, among women of their rights, of all these changes that have happened. We go and we talk to girls in schools, in high schools, in universities, through the you know, Arab the women lawyers group that I've established, for example, just to explain to them the recent changes that have taken place and how they can really impact and affect their lives positively. So I think there is always the challenge of, okay, now we have the legal framework, how can we implement it, and are we going to implement it successfully, and or to what extent? And there is also the challenge of, okay, the existing cultural barriers and even, you know, social limitations that we cannot deny.
Sure, of course. And you mentioned the women lawyers group that you formed. Can you tell us more about that and kind of when you formed it,
Sure.
Purpose, scope, and engagement?
Sure. So the Women Lawyers Group Middle East is a non-profit organization that was established in 2012. It's registered in the UK as a non-profit organization. And mainly I thought of establishing it and actually worked hard with other lawyers to set it up and also make it as successful as it has been, you know, to date, is because I consider myself a very fortunate Arab female. I was born into the right family, you know, to parents who really did not discriminate between me and my 4 sisters and our only brother. I had access to first-class education. I had, you know, occupied excellent jobs. I had mentors throughout my career. You know, I was able to meet awesome women who've helped me a great deal. So I wanted to share all of that with, you know, girls and women who either have similar, you know, experiences with mine, similar goals and similar convictions, but also with girls who are less privileged, who might be sitting, you know, in school thinking, okay, I want to become a lawyer because they're watching a successful lawyer on TV, or I want to become a judge and don't know how to go about that. So we've really set it up to be a platform for legal females in the region to get together. We hold events, conferences, training sessions. We engage and share experiences and knowledge. We also try to engage with policymakers to promote legal reform in areas that we believe are very important to enable women to really participate in the economy and in society. We deal with universities across the Arab world to try to place girls, students, female students who are, in their second or third year of law school, place them in law firms or in government offices or family offices for training, and mentorship opportunities. So it's really trying to promote and advance lawyers, female lawyers working and practicing in the region, or even hailing from the region, but based abroad. We also render pro bono legal advice to women who do not have access to legal advice when they need it. So it's really a very active, dynamic group of female lawyers across the Arab world. So if a question comes to me about some rule in labor law in Tunisia or in Morocco, I can easily pick up the phone and speak to one of the members and get help from her. I can also, for business opportunities, make connections, introduce lawyers to potential business partners, and so on and so forth.
That's great, terrific. And are there kind of corollaries in other professions? Yours focuses on women attorneys.
Yes.
What about women in business or other professions?
It is mainly for women in the legal profession, but women who are members and women we engage with, as lawyers, they occupy, and they work in various sectors and various industries. So there is that connection. However, the resources of the group is mainly focused on advancing women in the legal profession.
Sure. I didn't know if there were other organizations, other women's organizations.
Yes, yeah, definitely. We work with other organizations closely. So, for example, here in Abu Dhabi, there is a businesswoman group that's, I am an ambassador of that Arab International Business Women group, and I work closely with them. We hold events together, we sit together and we look at existing laws, for example, and existing practices that they see in their companies and in banks and institutions they work in, and we brainstorm about, okay, what's the cause we would like to champion, we would like to write papers about, try to take those papers to policymakers, to decision makers. So yes, definitely we work closely with groups like the Businesswoman Group. I also work closely, for example, with a social impact accelerator group in Dubai called C3. So we help them look at projects they receive from entrepreneurs to assess their viability and whether or not they can really fit in the legal space that exists in the UAE. I also work with universities in Egypt, in Morocco, also to get in touch with the pool of talent they have among students and among women interested in the legal field.
Terrific, wonderful. And is in a lot of countries, including the US, a lot of the opportunities are through networks, right? And through being able to flag a potential opportunity. So for instance, is it also the case there, or maybe increasingly in the region, where a network, an organization such as you have formed, or even personally is there outreach from companies when they're, for instance, looking to fill a position, that sort of thing? So you're able to also be very supportive in terms of flagging opportunities for women attorneys in your organization.
Yes, that's actually very, very true. And I think networking is a very important thing to probably spend a couple of minutes here talking about, because it's of all the lessons that I learned, I think in my career, the ability to strategically network stands out as one of the most important things. And unfortunately, in my case, I did not learn it early on in my career. I was one of those, women attending conferences, collecting business cards, and feeling awkward talking to strangers, and then just collecting the business cards and never really following up on anything. And it wasn't until later in my career that I was lucky enough to meet a great woman who taught me how to approach networking without feeling awkward. I'm an introvert, so it's not very easy for me to walk into a big room of full of people and say hello, hi, this is where I am in my career. Can we talk about it? How can you help me? So I decided, she actually helped me to try to approach it differently, to prepare for it, and to not shy away from the opportunities to really network and engage with people. So yes, I have learned from my mistakes, I think, and from working with a coach, that networking should be part of my work day. It shouldn't be viewed as an added obligation. It should be something that I prioritize and that I think of and maybe visit on daily basis if possible. And yes, to answer your questions, yes, we get approached all the time by companies looking for for lawyers, companies looking for trainees, companies looking for paralegals. We also get approached by companies who are looking for females who can sit on their boards. This is one of the also causes that we feel very strongly about, is promoting diversity on boards, because I think this is the only way, if you have a female or two on a board, to really get the policies of that organization to truly change, to allow for women to not only be hired, but be promoted and be retained properly. So yeah, yes, networking is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And can endorse all of those observations as well. I mean, certainly what we've seen here, and Europe has been much more the leader, candidly, than we're kind of playing catch up as a country, is on the issue of board diversity and yes, gender diversity, diversity writ large in the United States, yes, coming out of Europe, and others tend to be more gender focused, but board diversity and, the correlation between, the business case, right? The correlation between diversity and management and boards and corporate performance, which, has been out there for a while now, but seems to resonate in the fact that NASDAQ issued its proposal December 1st about, board diversity on companies that are listed on NASDAQ. And I think under the Biden administration, we're anticipating see even more forward movement in that, particularly in regulatory agencies, but like the SEC, in terms of its disclosure, really taking a more critical look at it. Part of, and thank you for bringing up that issue, which is near and dear to my heart, part of that calculus too, and the movement here has been organizations like yours, the institutional investors, who have said, yeah, we see it's not only the right thing to do, but we see the correlation between diversity in management, boards, and corporate performance. So, what are you doing about it? We're, proxies and all sorts of other, and including at the SEC. Yes. Is that something, and appreciating, cultural differences too, but is that something that your firm looks at too? Is like diversity, inclusion, ESG, are those part of any assessment? I'm just curious.
Yes, definitely. I mean, in the UAE, as you know, Tara, we have over 200 nationalities here, working and living side by side in the UAE. So really diversity and inclusion is part of the DNA of this country. If we talk about, organizations that where I have worked or I'm associated with, I think this is one of the priorities that companies and organizations have been focusing on, I would say, the last 5 years. And it's been very interesting and really a learning experience for me to sit in meeting rooms and try to think of, okay, how can we do it? It's great. It's the right thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. But we can't deny that we have deep-rooted, biases and stereotypes that might really make it difficult to implement. You might have it, in a policy that gets approved by the board, but then what are the the milestones, the deadlines, the really focused targets, who's held accountable for implementing this policy. So with time and with practice, I've experienced and seen that if you include senior women in, for example, the negotiation and the salary negotiation or the promotion discussion, you're more likely to end up with eliminating disparities to a certain degree. And that also applies to boards. So, when you have women on the board, they are going to bring with them their experiences and also sensitivity to the issue of implicit biases and gender biases. So yes, it is definitely at the heart of what we do and what we think about these days. And we have really established in my organization, and I see it also in other organizations, mentoring programs to mentor female lawyers and high performing ladies in our teams, and team them up and pair them with senior leaders to help them get their promotions or transition.
Yeah, that's great. And the whole area of implicit bias, which is everywhere in all of us, we as a firm a couple of years ago, and Meg was spearheading this at the firm, among many other things, but was the whole implicit bias training. We call it inclusive leadership, but really, because that's what we're trying to achieve and get to. And how to create the safe space to have those conversations and to have us, I know we've had other conversations, to have those difficult conversations and make sure that you really are connecting and really trying to break down what are very nuanced, oftentimes, sometimes blatant and not, but nuanced and just kind of really inherent biases in how we see the world. All of us have it. But then how to take that and cascade it throughout the whole kind of experience of the individual employee, right? And how do you bake that sort of orientation and discipline into how you hire, how you promote, how you give assignments to. Have you had to, either through your organization or just in your business experience, professional experience, had to grapple with some of those implementation and challenges?
Yes, definitely. As you said, Tara, as human beings, our actions are based on past experiences, on beliefs and opinions of others and of the society we operate in. Implicit biases and biases, conscious and unconscious biases in the workforce is something we deal with and we struggle with on daily basis. And from my observations, from where I sit, I've found it that the only way to really tackle this issue is you have to speak and educate the leaders, people sitting at the top of the organization. If they don't buy into, addressing these issues, you will never be able to really fix it. You will never be able to educate employees about, okay, what does bias mean? What does it, feel like, sound like? So even if we have the best, policies, even if we train employees and we put them through, tests and surveys and so on and so forth, if you don't educate the leaders, you don't train them to really listen to the employees and believe in the importance of creating, as you said, a safe work environment, a trust climate where employees can have those uncomfortable conversations. You create groups. This is something we've done in one of our companies. We created groups, of people to meet informally and talk about their different backgrounds, different experiences, any uncomfortable situations that they faced in the work place, and also make them aware that there is always a recourse if they find themselves in any inappropriate situation that really implies bias or discrimination. Mm-hmm. So I don't think the solution or the fix to this problem is simple. I think it's complex, and I think change is going to take a really long time for us to reach this environment that we just described, where there is trust and where people are really comfortable speaking up and discussing those issues.
Yeah, it is. It's nuanced. It's a hard, kind of simple and objective, and hard in implementation to address. One of the things, and you mentioned it a few minutes ago, is the whole issue of accountability and how to address accountability. I know we've talked about it in other scenarios, right? Which is, how do you build a system of accountability? The tension between, you want that safe space, you want people to be able to talk, you want to break down barriers, right? But the overall objective, of course, is building this culture of inclusion and real acceptance. So you need to also have some, the carrot and the stick, right? You need to have some accountability. How have you seen that whole side of accountability play out in your world?
It's not where I'd like it to be, to be honest with you. So we've reached this stage where we have, policies and practices and procedures that really promote, equality, promote gender equality, but we don't have, the implementation is still behind. So individual and organization accountability is not where it should be in organizations, even in organizations where you have people who are very educated, people who come from different backgrounds, different experiences, including people, from the Western, from the developed world. It's very difficult to create this individual organizational accountability, Tara. It has to take time, and as I said, it has to come from the top. So the top needs to talk to employees and tell them that this is really part of the culture of their daily, work, is to practice and talk to their colleagues and carry out their, responsibilities in a way that does not at all imply or endorse implicit biases and stereotypes. I haven't seen a successful example, to be honest with you, of individual or organizational accountability. I see that the subject is discussed on boards, is discussed in high committees, but it's always about implementation and who's going to really take ownership of this whole project and exercise and make it successful. So we're still, I think, lacking success significantly in the accountability part of this exercise.
Yeah, it is. It's a hard issue of accountability, because it can be the quote easy, and it's not easy, but accountability, the clearest accountability, right, is organizational if you put it up against metrics, right? But the individual accountability on behaviors and living the values, that's a challenge. One of the things, and then I'm going to open it up to other questions here, but one of the things that really is a signature of the Quorum Initiative is really how can we take action, right? How can, and action is incremental in my view, right? That we all have these big goals and objectives, but you achieve them through step by step. And so we at Quorum really look at what actions can we take individually and collectively as an organization to try to make some positive change. And so I was just wondering from your perspective, you know, what action for impact are you most focused on at the moment, and what you might recommend for us and the Quorum Initiative in terms of actions that we individually or collectively can collaborate with you or individually take?
Thank you for this question, Tara. Currently, I think what I am most focused on is through Women Lawyers Group Middle East is how can we enhance women's access to finance and financial services in this part of the world. We've been for a few years now focused on economic empowerment of women through legal reform. And we have really seen multiple examples of women who have, you know, great ideas, who are eager to work and implement projects. However, they lack access to finance and cannot talk to banks. And even if they sit in a room with a banker, are unable to really secure reasonable terms when they get a loan from a bank. So this is the cause that we are most focused on right now. And we are in talks with banks and financial service providers to try to find a way of making it easier for women who cannot, for example, offer collateral. How can a bank feel comfortable lending or giving access to finance to women who cannot provide collateral? You know, a woman who doesn't own a house, doesn't own a land. You know, in most parts of the Arab world, these assets are traditionally owned by men. So we're trying to talk to banks to think of solutions outside the box to be able, through Women Lawyers Group and other groups that are working with us on this initiative, to enable women women who have contacted us to be able to reach banks and financial services adequately, and make a dream come true in terms of their projects and aspirations.
Yeah, interesting. We have a similar challenge, right? Which is women having access to capital, women entrepreneurs, and in particular, women of color in this country, really, where it's really, we have a poor record and really need to focus on that as well. So if there's a way, to your point, and Meg, what we're talking about is Najwa's kind of objectives, but also ways that we might collaborate and provide mutual support. That certainly is food for thought, and something that very concrete, right? Where we may be able to figure out.
Exactly, we will be able to plan it and make it happen. To talk to people who can help us make it happen. And then, as you said, we measure it. We have milestones, and then we implement and we deliver. I would be delighted, actually, it'd be great. I'd be thrilled to work with you to brainstorm about this further and try to find ways where we can work together. I'd also like to probably understand better how Quorum Initiative and your community can be introduced to our community here, of whether it's lawyers or women in the financial services or in any other areas of practice. Because we were talking about networking, and I think we tend to feel comfortable just focusing on networks that are within the countries where we live, or societies and cultures where we feel most comfortable with or familiar with. And I'd like to take this opportunity to really invite you all to connect with us closely And there is a lot that we could do together. And, you know, if we support each other, you know, encourage each other. We were talking about how women can really advance. And I think it's if we unite, you know, we basically, we vote for each other, we hire each other, we, you know, mentor each other. And so it's all through networking and working together on causes that we believe we can make a difference in you know, our societies and communities. So this is something I'd love to work with you and Megan and everyone at the Quorum Initiative to you know, make it happen and create help entrepreneurs in this part of the world, and as well as in the US and the UK.
Great. Okay, I have it on my list, Najwa.
There is one more thing, Tara. This is great. One more thing that I'm planning to focus on this year, and it's a bit different. I was fortunate a few years back to be introduced to something called transcendental meditation. So we worked throughout the, you know, my last probably 12 years in this profession. I came to know Ray Dalio closely, the founder and manager of Bridgewater hedge fund. And he introduced me to the guy who taught him transcendental meditation. And for years, I have struggled with making it part of my daily routine twice a day. You know, you're supposed to do it 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. I managed to do it 20 minutes in the evening, but in the mornings, I'm very alarmed in the morning. I'm a very, you know, energetic person early morning. So my antenna is on and I'm just ready to, you know, go to work and get engaged with people and with situations and with everything I have to deal with. So I've been doing it in the evenings, and he keeps telling me, the coach, that that's not enough. I've definitely seen improvement. I'm much calmer than what I used to be.
Holy moly, you're much calmer.
I am much calmer. Can you believe it? I always say I have, you know, the DNA of a Libyan and a Palestinian. That's not good at all.
Yeah, that's serious.
And I haven't been able to, you know, to learn from my Scandinavian colleagues, from colleagues who are very calm and collected in meeting rooms and can't show their emotions and passion. And transcendental meditation has helped me calm down a bit and manage those interesting situations and you know, interviews and meetings. I've also learned something called leadership embodiment, and this is mainly she taught me, this coach in California, and she's a great lady in San Francisco, how to sit and how, you know, to the pose I have to basically take when I am sitting in front of my, you know, manager or team or, you know, the board chairman in the boardroom, how to manage that situation and get what I want out of that discussion. So I'm planning to focus on this, you know, on meditation, on getting spiritually stronger, being able to connect with people I want in my life, you know, more effectively. So this is also one of the projects that I'm hoping would have an impact on me personally and also on people I work with and deal with.
That's great. Well, you know, it has been a growing movement here as well on the whole mindfulness, right? And excuse me, mindfulness as a way of lowering your, you know, blood pressure and being more present and being more collected in terms. And I try to do that. I'm Irish, so I tend to, you know, show my passion. And my husband's Italian. My kids have no hope of ever being chill. But no, I take your point, because and this is a whole nother topic, which I know that Quorum has also addressed, but the whole issue of overall wellness and kind of, you know, that holistic person. So I'm going to look up with the transcendental meditation, though. I'm probably a couple years older than you are, but I remember when it was like the thing when I was a kid in the US, right? The whole TM and, but and on a serious note, it's critical, whether it's TM or mindfulness or or meditation, you know, all of it, that the whole wellness and kind of spiritual, fundamental spiritual piece of us is addressed as well. So this has been such fun. Meg, maybe I'll hand it over to you, or if anybody has any questions.
Najwa, this is first of all, thank you for all of your comments and for sharing so much of yourself with us. It's so fascinating to hear what you're up to. I just wanted to ask the question no one wants to ask at the moment, because we're all so sick of dealing with our own realities of bad health in terms of the pandemic. But we're very focused on ourselves and not doing a great job of getting the job done here in the US, and UK is struggling as well, although I think managing it slightly better, although they're in full lockdown. So I don't know whether that's better or not. What's going on in the Middle East? Because we don't hear a whole lot, I have to be honest.
I think, you know, we've been living with this nightmare since February, March of last year. But I'm happy to say that I think the Arab countries, generally speaking, have managed to manage this crisis much better than countries like, you know, the US, Brazil, the UK, and most European countries. In the UAE, for example, they've enforced full lockdown back in March, and enacted laws that made it mandatory to wear masks if you are outside or if you are in closed places with other people. They've put limitation on the number of people that could be in the same room at the same time, and they've also imposed fines on those who are found in violation of those rules, to the extent that at the peak of the crisis, they use the policy of name and shame. So if you are found to be, outside without a mask, and the police finds you, your name and the, your basically the ID, your civil ID number would be published on, social media and in the newspaper. So people really believe that this was really a serious matter, and that they have to adhere to the government, instructions, and be responsible for themselves and to themselves and others in their families and societies. And as you know, people here live in big families, so it's dangerous, to bring the virus back home to your elderly parent, or your grandmother or aunt, and so on and so forth. This was March, April of last year. Then, of course, the economy was hurting, and they've taken the decision to slowly open up while still keeping certain restrictions in place. We're very fortunate and lucky with the fact that they were able to roll out the vaccine, the Chinese vaccine, back in September of 2020. They made it available first to frontliners and to people over 70 years old, and also to people with chronic illnesses. And then it was made available to everyone else for free. Last December, the Pfizer vaccine arrived, and in Dubai. And I am very fortunate to report that I took the first dose of the vaccine, of Pfizer vaccine, last week. And I am scheduled for my second dose in a couple of weeks' time. So they have managed here to really contain the situation successfully. We still have new cases reported on daily basis. The death rate is very low. And also the rate of people who end up in hospitals is very low. Keep in mind, Meg, also that the population here is predominantly young.
Right.
It's not like some countries in the Europe, or like the US or other countries. Right. It's mainly youth, and most of them tend to, even if they contract the virus, they'll have a very mild case of COVID and tend to recover. And the same applies to most Arab countries. I can't think of a country where there is a very high rate of death, reported on daily basis, or where people end up in an ICU on a ventilator in a matter of 5-7 days. Simply because people did, generally speaking, adhere to the rules, and all Arab countries mandated masks from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And
amazing.
Yeah, so I don't know. I can't even think what the new normal, what actually normal looks like
Will
or
be.
feels like
Yeah.
anymore, you know. We're used to wearing the mask, cleaning, you know, our hands, groceries, and we miss travel just
Yeah.
as you probably do. I miss coming to the US. We're still hopeful that I'm hopeful that with, you know, getting the vaccine, I'll be able to hopefully travel again to, you know, countries where there is either family or essential, you know, work requirements.
That's amazing. Well, thanks.
I'm happy though. I'm really happy that we have President Biden now, and hopefully this whole situation will be addressed, you know, as efficiently and as soon as he and his administration can.
Yeah, well, we're hoping we'll get our act together a little bit better here. So, Najwa and Tara, thank you so much for this discussion today. It was so amazing. It's so amazing to share actually about all the to actually notice all the commonalities that we actually all have,
Yeah.
and all the work that still needs to be done, and to continue to think about how we do that collectively, because it's in the collective that we'll get the larger impact, I think, long term. And you talked about that several times, and you talked about it a lot in terms of how you're navigating to get change done in your spheres of influence, and it's so critical, and very impressive. I also loved some of your comments about how you educate. You're educating up and you're educating down. And that's a fascinating thing, because there's still so much work that has to get done on that front, that people really understand, you know, and frankly, we've had policies and laws in place. We could have better ones, by the way, but we've had them in place much longer than several of the countries in the Middle East. And I could tell you, we still have a very long way to go in terms of what implementation looks like, successful implementation looks like, you know? And so you made a really important point about that. The work has to get done. There's no way around the work that has to get done. Even if the laws and policies are there, there's still so much culture shift and education that has to happen. So it's so fascinating. I think we can really help each other in that sense, trying to figure it out. And the another comment that you made so many amazing ones, but I'm just picking up on a few that I thought were really fantastic, was this notion about intentional networking that you've done. And I find that really, it's a very fascinating framing for networking, which is sort of the bane of everybody's existence. It feels like exhausting, you know, how do you make sure that you've done that? But I think when you bring it to a point of intent and shared interests, which is what you're looking for, you know, how do you find shared interests as you go to meet people and expand your network? And then once you find that, how do you do something together, you know, that can have impact? So there's something very fascinating. You've done an incredible job with that. So I thought it was worth mentioning, because I'm very, very impressed, Najwa, with all that you're doing on that front. So keep up the good work, because there's so much more to do. I thought your call to action to us was that there's a lot we could all be doing together. So I absolutely love that. It has been heard. Your call to action has been heard. We will come back to you on that one for sure. But I also think, besides what Quorum might do, Najwa, and collaborating with you, there was a call to action to all of us individually to think beyond where we are currently to what else and who else can we help or get involved with. And so I want to, Quorum is all about taking action. That's what we believe in as an organization. And so I want to challenge us all to really consider that. I think you framed that up for us so beautifully. And I'd like us to think about what we're doing in the next 30, 60 days about that. Because in these crazy times of this pandemic, it's hard to stay lifted. And I think helping each other, we lift ourselves while we're lifting others. So there's something really amazing about that. If we can spend more time and energy on that, I think I think we'd all be in a better place emotionally, you know, and spiritually, frankly. And thank you for the tips on meditation. I too have a very hard time with that. And I talk about it all the time and struggle to get it done. So I'm very inspired by the work you're doing.
I'll send you the name of the book that
Will you do that? That would be amazing. We would love it. We would love it. That's amazing. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So Najwa, you've been so utterly generous with your time. It's so late there, and we're so appreciative. And you're welcome to come back anytime you want to Quorum. We would love to have you, just so you know that. I just wanted to close with a few other things besides our action item to figure out how we can connect and collaborate with Najwa and her communities, and also what else we can be doing individually. We have a lot of amazing sessions coming up, which Diane is going to be communicating with all of you about in terms of programming. And we're going to be sort of talking about things around after the crazy 2020, you know, how are we feeling about ourselves, and what do we want our leadership to look like? Where do we want to go for 2021, which Dana Galen's going to lead us in an interactive session around that. There's going to be amazing discussion with Jay Newton-Small, who is going to talk a little bit about women in both leadership and in politics. And given the year we've had recently, I think that'll be fascinating discussion about that. And Lynn, who's I believe on this call, as well as Deborah DeSantis, Lynn Murphy-Rivera and Deborah DeSantis are going to lead us in a sort of cohort for members connecting point. So those have been really amazing sessions. So if you have the time, make the time for that. I would encourage you to do so. And then we also have our bigger programming that's going to come up in June, which we'll be communicating about shortly for HOW, which is our big sort of, it'll be a virtual conference. Unfortunately, in June, I don't think we're going to be fully out of all of this. So we're going to stay virtual and safe. And so we look forward to having you all join for that as well. So that's a wrap, other than you know, if you were here, Najwa, it would be time for a big, huge hug. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We can't wait to see you when we can see you. Otherwise, we'll continue to see you virtually, hopefully.
Yes,
and Tara, thanks so much.
Your sessions, Meg. I look forward to joining your future sessions.
Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. We would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely love it. Yeah, Tara, thanks so much. And everybody to the Quorum community, so great to see you all. Hope that you're staying well, taking care of yourselves, and let's all be inspired by Najwa. We need to get vaccinated.
Definitely.
Right?
Take care.
All right, be well. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.